welcome to episode 9 of the After Dark podcast. My name is Isaac Marano, and for today's episode, I'll be talking with Rochelle as they share their own personal story about domestic violence. Okay, Rochelle, thanks so much for taking the time to be on the podcast today. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
No, that's okay. Just wondering if you could share a little bit about what it was like growing up and what the relationship was like between your parents.
Well, I'm one of 4 children. My dad was in the military, in the Air Force, and so he was gone a lot. And my mom just kind of was like a stay-at-home mom and took care of everything. So we had like a pretty like status quo military life. Until my parents got divorced whenever I was about 11. And then I ended up, we lived mostly with my mom, and it was kind of hard because she was like a single mom with 4 kids, and she had a hard time making ends meet, and so she was gone a lot. And so I just ended up, diving into taking care of myself. At first I was like, made sure my siblings were taken care of because we were pretty young, and so I kind of took care of them for a while, and then finally I just had to kind of do some self-preservation and just kind of did what I needed to do for myself until I graduated.
Oh, okay, yep. And then you moved on out of home after that?
Yeah, and then I went to college for well, yeah, it was supposed to be a 4-year college, but I ended up having to drop out, actually.
Okay, well, I was wondering maybe you could share a little bit about what it was like in the beginning of the relationship with your ex-partner.
So in the beginning, well, I guess I should just say, like, I ended up dropping out of college because I was sexually assaulted. And so I went to go live with my mom after that in very rural Montana. uh, and I went up there with the intention of kind of healing and figuring out my life, and I met who would become my ex-husband and abuser while I was there. And he was the first guy that ever really gave me the attention I thought I was supposed to have. It was like,
Yeah.
he was very attentive, and he just wanted to be with me all the time. And he was like so adamant about making my dreams come true because I wanted to go to film school, and he was a stuntman in films. And so he was like, "Hey, why don't you just come with me and we'll make it happen." And then it wasn't too much longer after that. It was like the isolation really happened because I was away from everybody that I knew, and we were in sometimes very rural location, like isolated locations, and I would just be alone in the hotel room and like unable to get to anybody else or any resources. And that's when like the abuse started.
So were you in the relationship for quite a while, and was your partner abusive like from the very beginning, or it kind of took a little while to kind of take form?
So I was in the relationship for about 3 years. Not all of that we were actually together. He would like go off to work on movies a lot, and then also I separated from him several times, like trying to get away from him. And he wasn't abusive the whole time. I would say that like it took until we went down to work on movies, which was probably like 3 months after we met. And then that's when the abuse started. And then it was there was like cycles of abuse. It was like there was the honeymoon periods where he was promising that he would change and that he would be better, and so the abuse didn't always look the same.
Yeah, so you were struggling with physical abuse as well as emotional abuse?
Right. Most of what I was dealing with him was emotional abuse. There was a lot of threats and manipulation that took place, but there was also physical abuse and sexual abuse. It was really difficult at first because I had no idea what I was looking at. I didn't understand really what was happening for a long time, just trying really hard to make it work for so long. And I thought that if I did things that maybe he would stop being that way. And I came to realize that that's not the case, that, it doesn't matter what you do. It's not about you, it's about them and their need for control over you.
Yeah. Yep. So no matter what you were able to try and do, like it would never be good enough in their eyes.
Yeah, like I married him. The intent of, I was like, well, this will make him, I mean, he'll know that, I'm serious and that I want to be with him. And, he'll stop accusing me of, cheating on him or not loving him or whatever, and it didn't change anything.
Yeah. And looking back as well, can you see any warning signs that you might have missed back then, but they're a bit clearer to see now?
Yeah, I would say the biggest warning signs that I didn't see initially was he needed to be with me all the time. Like I wasn't allowed to have my own autonomy. It was always how I related to him. And then also that he talked very negatively about his ex-girlfriends in very like degrading ways. And I realized that that's a warning sign for an abuser if they're not willing to take any responsibility for, you know, their past at all, and everything is always everybody else's fault. I would say those are the big things that I just ignored in the beginning. I had been in probably two long-term relationships before that in high school and in college. And yeah, I had no idea what I was looking at, and that's why I feel like education is one of the most important things in combating domestic violence is you know telling people like what the warning signs are, what the red flags are, and like what these behaviors are, so that people know what they're looking at.
From all of the other survivors that I've been speaking to over the last few months, it's crazy how the description of the partners, they all seem to fit like the same mold. Like each story is different, but there's still so many similarities. Like with the controlling nature, not taking responsibility, being quite possessive, and like in that kind of sense. Yeah, so it's very strange. It's like they've all kind of read the same rule book of how to act.
Yeah, it's alarming. I was in a support group for women who were in abusive relationships after I left my ex, and I was there for about 3 years, probably like on and off. And you would just get this, like all of these different women would come through, but the stories would all sound so similar. Like we'd all sit there just like shaking our head, like, yes, yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. And we were all different kinds of women from different walks of life. These are all men from all different types of men, economic status, demographics, but they all behave very similarly.
Yeah, yeah. So I know you mentioned before about the feeling of isolation as well. So did you have any support from friends and family like throughout the relationship, or was that cut off quite soon?
It was cut off very quickly. I wasn't allowed to. Some of my best friends were men, and I was no longer allowed to talk to them. Otherwise, it was going to be, a huge fight. And so I started losing contact with friends, and then he like was trying to turn me against my family, and didn't really want me to reach out to them. It was like very manipulative. Like if I would be on the phone with my family, all of a sudden, like, he needed my attention for something. And so it was I lost contact with my family, and then eventually I was just embarrassed. I was like, what am I going to tell them when I talk to them? Um, I don't want to tell them how unhappy I am and how horrible things are going. I would much rather just not talk to them. And so, yeah, I did lose contact with a lot of my family and my friends. But then once I left, my family was very supportive and helping me get back on my feet and being there for me and my daughter. Yeah, and then I just slowly, regained my friends and got new ones, and like some of the friends that I've made from the support groups and the advocates that I had, they're like the best relationships I've had, in my whole life.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so how did you eventually get out of the relationship?
So I ended up um, having to do it felt like something out of a movie. It was very dramatic. I had He had taken my daughter and was threatening to not bring her back. And so I called my mom, and she was several states away, and she came, and we did kind of, I guess, like a little kind of swap thing where I was like, oh, you stay here and talk to my mom. She came to visit, keep her company for a little bit. I'm going to go run with my daughter to the store and we'll be back in just a little bit. And I put her in the car and then I just drove away and didn't come back. And I had the help of a safe house where we were able to stay. It was difficult leaving because there was, just I was just thinking about it today. Like the voicemails from him were, threatening all kinds of terrible things, and it was scary. But I'm glad that we left the way that we did because I think it could have been a lot worse. Because I had already left him once before, and I did a kind of a similar thing. He was out working on movies, and then he I just dropped contact with him and he wasn't able to find me, and that worked pretty well until I wasn't able to like serve him divorce papers after a certain point, and so I gave in and contacted him, and that's how we ended up getting back together in the first place. But then the second time I was done. I knew that because the abuse was starting to spill over into like onto my daughter, and that was not what I wanted for her at all. So I had a hard line in the sand, and I knew that I needed to leave. And we knew that by not being upfront and honest and telling him that that was what was happening, that was the safest thing for us.
Yeah. Yep. And that must have been challenging as well with your daughter there being so young. And so did she witness a lot of the abuse, or was it possible for you to kind of keep her kind of shielded from that?
I thought that I was shielding her from it, and then there was an incident where he was he just wanted to hurt me so bad that and I had her in my arms, and he was pulling her out of my arms and like hurting her just to hurt me, and I knew that this was only going to get worse from there. He was willing to do terrible things and hurt, her as well. And yeah, I feel awful that she had to go through that, and I know it's affected her a lot. But she's a lot older now, and she's doing a lot better. She still has a hard time understanding why, because now, like since we've been separated, and her time that she's had with her dad, he acts very put together, and buys her everything that she wants, and just is like, she doesn't understand like what he can be. That was when I was done. I couldn't let it go on anymore. So it was after that I, cut off emotionally from him, and I was biding my time, trying to figure out how to leave. And I was working, but he was spending my money faster than I could make it. And yeah, and he had moved us into like back up away from like my resources, back up to very rural Montana again, and he was trying to he's Native American, and he was trying to move us back to the reservation that he's from. And that was whenever he took my daughter, and he was like, I'm not coming back unless you promise that you're going to come move over here. And I just knew that I was going to die up there. Like, I just knew it in my heart that if I moved over there to the reservation with no resources, like there's not even cell signal, and yeah, I knew that would have been the end of me. So that's when I called my mom, and I'm very thankful for her and all the help that she's given me.
Yeah, yeah, because with the preparation in finally leaving, did you find that there was like a lot of resources that you could find to try and figure out a plan, like either from online or other support groups or anything?
I lucked out, definitely. I When I left, one of the things that I did was I filed for a protection order where I was living in Montana at the time, and they granted that and were very helpful, and they gave me resources if I needed them. But I knew I was going back to Colorado, to where my mom was, to go to the safe house there. And they're wonderful. Like, oh my gosh, the just the best. Um, so when I was leaving, even my job that I had at the time, I like, told them what was going on, and that I had to leave, and I was so sorry, because I was actually up for a promotion, and yeah, everything was going superficially well there, but um, and they were incredibly supportive. They helped me transfer my job back to Colorado so that I could still have a job. And yeah, I mean, I've been so fortunate, that I've always had support and resources available to me, no matter where I was.
It's very inspiring too that to hear how grateful that you are, like despite everything that you've had to go through.
Well, I mean, that's all I can be is grateful because I'm here, and like both me and my daughter are safe and healthy and happy, and we're moving on with our lives. And I owe that all to the people that helped us, you know? I mean, I don't know what else I would be other than grateful.
Yeah. Oh no, and for future relationships, just wondering how you think that they might be affected after have being involved in an abusive relationship before.
um, I would say I have a very hard time opening up. Um, I tend to keep people at a distance, or like a potential partner at a distance. Um, so I take I'm a lot of work, I guess.
Oh,
um,
okay.
so like in order for me to trust you, because I'm like really vetting somebody, before they get to be a part of my life or my daughter's life. Um, so yeah, there hasn't really been too many relationships since then, but uh, and that's probably a huge reason why. But I don't think that's the worst thing in the world, you know.
Okay, so what advice would you give to someone that's in a relationship with a survivor of domestic violence?
I guess my advice would be to be patient. If you really care about this person and you want to be with them, just you have to be patient with them and allow them their time to open up, and to trust you, and just make sure that you are doing your best to be trustworthy and be a good partner to them.
And also, what advice might you have if there's someone listening now that is currently in an abusive relationship?
Um, my biggest advice would be to start working on, loving yourself. You know, get back to who you are. And whenever you do that, you'll find your inner strength again and you'll know what's the right thing to do. I don't want to tell anybody that you have to leave or anything like that because everybody needs to make those decisions in their own time. But the best thing you can do is, find things that bring you joy and take care of yourself. And once, you get back to who you are, because I feel like what these relationships really break down who we are, and we get very lost. And once you build that back up again, it's going to be very difficult for that person to have the control over you that they want. And then just to start looking at resources. There's in everybody's area, I would hope that there is some kind of resource. At least there's like a national hotline. I know, I'm sure you guys have something similar in Australia. Give them a call. The one time that you have, like, where you're safe to do that, and just let your story come out, and I don't know. I just found just talking to an advocate helped so much for me because it made me feel like what I was going through. They told me it wasn't my fault, and I think that's the biggest thing that abusive people in abusive relationships need to hear is that you didn't do anything wrong. You don't deserve this, and yeah, I would just start looking at your resources and see, what your options are, and then you can make the right decision for yourself from there.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's great advice, definitely. And I was thinking just before we do wrap things up, if we could talk a little bit about what you're doing to raise awareness of domestic violence.
Absolutely, I would love to. So right now, I am in pre-production of a short film that I wrote, and I will be directing. It's a story about a woman that's in an abusive marriage, and it eventually escalates to violence. And when it does, she has to make the choice whether to stay or to leave. And I'm really hoping to make something that's really impactful and powerful, that'll speak to a lot of people, hopefully people in abusive relationships or survivors that have been in abusive relationships. I want to get people talking about it. I want to show domestic violence for what it really is and not just the tropes that we often see in media, because I think that's a huge problem as to why this problem continues to persist, because we don't talk about it and we have no idea what it actually is that we're looking at.
Yeah. Wow, it's amazing. And have you been planning this for a little while now?
So I wrote it, I would say probably about 2 years ago was when I had the idea, and then I wrote it. And it's something that I care very deeply about. And as like an actress and a writer and a filmmaker, it's what I feel that I can do for the problem, um, is to get the story out there. And yeah, I'm so excited about it.
That's amazing. And like obviously you would have drawn on a lot of your own personal experiences when you were in the writing stage of the film.
I did. At first, it felt, I mean, I just kind of put a lot of my story out there, and then I kind of reeled it back in, and I wanted to make it more universal. I didn't want it to necessarily be my story. So, but I mean, as we were talking earlier, it's like a lot of survivors, we have such similar stories because abuse can behave very similar. And so I wanted to make sure that I was like illustrating the cycles that happen in abuse and the forms of abuse that people don't necessarily think about. Like, I didn't know that if an abuser breaks your phone, that's physical abuse because they're taking away your resource. and then just throwing things, and like people just I guess they don't realize what can constitute abuse. And so I would try to include lots of things in there that would get people thinking, maybe, and they would see like maybe why somebody would stay in an abusive relationship, because sometimes leaving can be really hard too. It's
Yeah.
not an easy path. And so but I wanted to illustrate all of that in a way that people can kind of come to their own conclusion about what's the right thing to do. That's my hope, is that people can see maybe their story resonate with them on screen, and then they can see what happens whenever she makes her choices.
Yeah. Wow, that's so exciting to hear that you've got that all in the works.
Oh, thank you. I'm beyond excited about it, and we're going to be filming here in a little less than 2 months. So it's it's crunch time.
Yeah, yeah. Oh no. Well, no. Well, I think that's pretty much everything. But I was just going to ask if you had anything else that you might want to share that you might have been thinking about earlier on that you didn't get a chance to say.
I just want to thank you so much for letting me talk a little bit, and I don't know. I hope this helps somebody.
Oh, definitely, it will. Yeah. Thank you though for taking the time to be on the podcast, because I know that you have your schedule must look quite jam packed at the moment.
It is. It is. This is well worth it. I mean, this is why I'm doing it. Is to be able to put a voice to this issue, and so the more I can talk about it. I mean, you're giving me practice, because
Yeah. Yep.
It's great, because I think I'm going to be talking about this for a long time.
No, it's okay. And just one last thing, if people wanted to find out more about you or the film, where's the best place to do that?
So you can find either me or the film both on Instagram or Facebook. The film is Breathe Short Film, NM as in New Mexico, and that's both on Instagram and Facebook. And then you can find me under Cassandra Rochelle Fetters on both Facebook and Instagram.
Okay, Rochelle. Well, thanks so much again for everything, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this story of hope. If you know of anyone that might be struggling with domestic violence, please feel free to share this podcast with them. If you believe in the value of sharing these stories and would like to donate to show your support, I would really appreciate it. To find out more about donating, please visit afterdarkpodcast.com. So, until next time, my name is Isaac Marano, and this is the After Dark Podcast.